Jeremiah 1 verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, before you were born I set you apart. God said this to a man who immediately responded, I do not know how to speak, I am only a child. God called him a prophet to nations before he had a vocabulary for the assignment. And then told him his disqualification did not matter, because the calling was decided before he existed. You have been looking at yourself and concluding you are not enough for what God is asking. Too young. Too inexperienced. Too limited in the wrong ways at the wrong time. And that assessment feels honest, because it is. Jeremiah's assessment was honest too. He really did not know how to speak. He really was young. The problem was not that his self-assessment was false. The problem was that God's assessment of him was older than his self-assessment had any chance of being. Read that again. Part 1. The calling was established before Jeremiah had a chance to disqualify himself. Jeremiah 1:4-5, The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, before you were born I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. 3 distinct actions in this verse. Knew. Set apart. Appointed. Each one happening at a different point, before formation in the womb, before birth, and as a formal appointment. The calling was not reactive. God did not observe Jeremiah developing and decide he might work. The knowing, the setting apart, and the appointing all preceded Jeremiah's existence. But here is what nobody told you. The Hebrew word for new in verse 5 is yadati, from yada, which carries the meaning of intimate knowledge, experiential knowledge, the kind of knowing that implies deep personal relationship rather than mere observation. God did not say, Before I formed you I noticed you or considered you. He said, I knew you. The same word used for the covenant knowledge between God and Israel. Before Jeremiah took his first breath, he was already in a relationship that preceded him. Part 2. Jeremiah's objection was completely honest, and completely beside the point. Jeremiah 1 verse 6. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak, I am too young. The Hebrew word for alas is aha, an exclamation of distress, the sound someone makes when they realize what is being asked of them. This was not a polite request for clarification. This was a visceral response to being given an assignment that felt impossible. I do not know how to speak. I am too young. 2 separate objections delivered in the same breath. Think about that for a second. Jeremiah was not performing humility. He was genuinely afraid. And the 2 objections reveal the specific shape of his fear, inadequacy of skill and inadequacy of age. He did not feel equipped and he did not feel old enough to be taken seriously. Both objections were legitimate by every human measure available. And God did not argue with either of them. Part 3. God's response did not address the objections. It replaced them. Jeremiah 1 verses 7-8. But the Lord said to me, Do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you. Do not say, Not. You are wrong about being young. Not, you are more capable than you think. Do not say. God did not dispute the data Jeremiah was working with. He redirected the conclusion. The question was never whether Jeremiah was young or whether he knew how to speak. The question was whether the one who sent him was sufficient for what was being asked. Now stop. Many of you will push back on this. Good. Because this is the most uncomfortable part of Jeremiah's calling. God essentially said, Your objections are noted, and we are moving anyway. He did not wait for Jeremiah to feel ready. He did not adjust the assignment to fit Jeremiah's comfort level. He told him not to say the thing he was feeling, because saying it would position the feeling as the final authority on whether the assignment was possible. Part 4. The physical act of commissioning preceded any evidence of readiness. Jeremiah 1 verse 9. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. The problem Jeremiah identified, I do not know how to speak, was answered not with a course in rhetoric or years of preparation. It was answered with a touch. And the touch came before the speaking. Before the first prophecy. Before any demonstration of the gift. The provision for the assignment was placed in Jeremiah before he had evidence it was there. Let that land. Most people wait for the evidence before they accept the assignment. Jeremiah received the provision through an act he could not verify, and then was sent out to speak. The mouth that did not know how to speak was given the words before it was tested. But it was not tested before it was used. Part 5. The moral dilemma Jeremiah's calling creates. Many of you will push back on this. Good. Because Jeremiah's life was not an argument for the benefits of accepting your calling. He is called the weeping prophet. He spent decades warning a people who refused to listen. He was imprisoned, thrown into a cistern, and watched Jerusalem fall exactly as he said it would. He was not vindicated in his lifetime. His calling cost him everything comfortable. Tell me in the comments, if God called you at the cost of everything comfortable, would you have answered the way Jeremiah did? Part 6. What God saw in Jeremiah was never what Jeremiah saw in himself. Jeremiah 1 verse 10. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. The man who said he did not know how to speak was appointed over nations. The man who said he was only a child was given authority to uproot kingdoms. The gap between what Jeremiah saw when he looked at himself and what God saw when he looked at Jeremiah was not a small difference of perspective. It was a completely different frame. Here is what Jeremiah's self-assessment was missing. It was missing the variable of who was doing the sending. I do not know how to speak was a complete and accurate sentence about Jeremiah in isolation. But Jeremiah was never being sent in isolation. He was being sent by the one who knew him before he existed, who set him apart before he was born, who would put words in his mouth before he spoke them. The insufficiency was real. The sufficiency of the sender was larger. You are not too young, too old, too unqualified, or too limited for what God decided before you were formed. You are exactly what was appointed, not because you are enough on your own terms, but because the calling was never based on your terms to begin with. If you want to understand what it looks like when God's economy does not run on the math you think it does, watch the video on screen now. Workers who showed up at the last hour received the same wage as those who worked all day. The denarius was never about how long you worked. Drop "I receive this" in the comments if you are choosing today to stop letting your self-assessment have the final word, and trust the assessment made before you existed to have one.